Taylor Gonzales, thank you for joining the latest episode of the On the Touchline podcast. And much like many of the guests that have come on the show, Taylor, that actually found out about you via social media. And I guess that's the world we live in these days. And one, complete admiration for your um, just dedication to not only staying fit but workout routine. You're a beast. I'll just come right out and say
Thank
it.
you.
It's actually quite impressive. So we'll make sure we list Taylor's handle that you can go check out her work or whatever. I saw you kicking around the soccer ball yesterday, so you can see
Yeah.
your back, right? But for folks who don't know you, give folks a little bit of a background. Where you grew up, where you're at now, and a little bit about your backstory, and introduce yourself to the listeners.
Okay, so my name is Taylor Gonzales. I'm from Overland Park, Kansas, and right now I'm currently at the University of Montevallo. I played soccer there for 4 years, and then that last semester of my senior year, I decided to walk on a track just because it was something I'd never gotten to do before, not in high school, and nothing before that. Kind of gave it a shot and ended up being really good at it. So now I'm actually back for a fifth year to run cross country and track again. So that's just kind of my little background as to how I got involved with all the things that I'm doing now.
What was your youth soccer experience like, and sort of the journey you went on? The twists and turns that is youth soccer to get to Montevallo.
So the way everything kind of worked out for me, I was always on either the second team or the third team, no matter what club I played for, where I came from. Same thing throughout high school. Like I was the kid who was essentially like second best throughout my entire career for club. And I think being in that second best on that second team, or being the kid who wasn't starting but was that first sub in, that kind of gave me a really good platform to come into college. So for club, I played for a team that was really, really solid. We were a team full of the second best. So we all had that work ethic kind of instilled in us early on because we always had something that we wanted to reach for, because we were never on the first team. We were always striving to be on that first team. So that club career of mine kind of put this amazing platform out there. And then throughout tournaments, we gradually grew as a team, and that's how we got exposure to come to college and to go to all these different showcases to find our niche when it came to school. But that's just kind of how that morphed and evolved, because that just really helped me grow as a player.
There's um, I would call it a fascination, I'm not sure what the word is I'm looking for. Maybe just a really strong hunger amongst parents that if their child isn't in that first team, as a youth, footballer or soccer player, that they somehow have failed as a parent, right? I've had this conversation with not only parents that their kids have been on my team, but I've heard it on the sidelines, from parents, and that's all the way from youth all the way up through high school. And I'm curious, obviously, put you on the spot here to speak for your parents, but I wonder how that was handled, because it sounds like there's a really great lesson learned by you as an athlete that, whatever you want, you have to work for it. You have to put the time in. What team you're on, yeah, okay, maybe it's a little bit important, but it didn't stop you from pursuing your goals, your dreams, getting to where you wanted to go. And I'm
Mhm.
curious if those conversations were had at your house, um, or how mom and dad or your family, may have reacted to that.
So my parents have three kids. So I'm the oldest, and then I've got my two younger sisters. And our youngest sister was the kid who was on the first team. So the whole "you should be here, that person should be there" conversation was definitely a regular in our household, whether it was day to day or week to week, that conversation was had. So with my youngest sister being on the first team and my middle sister and I being on either the second team or the third team, I think that definitely fueled that a little bit. But we could also kind of realize, yes, there are some politics that come with placement and stuff like that, but at the same time, it's okay to be a late bloomer, which I found out in college, and which my middle sister found out in college. It's okay, yeah, we may have been on the second or third team for club, and then we get to college and all of a sudden we're 4-year starters, we're the leading points getter, we're leading in goals, we're leading in assists, and it's like, okay, just because I was here for club doesn't mean I can't climb the ladder in college. In comparison to some of the kids that were on those first teams, all of a sudden by their freshman, sophomore year of college, they weren't playing anymore.
Mm.
So you kind of see this almost peak or this climb. For some kids, they hit their peak really, really early and it just kind of clicks for them. For other kids, it takes a little bit longer, and that's totally fine. And I think my parents are finally beginning to realize that 17 years later into my soccer career, 15 years later into my other sister's soccer career. So it's just kind of funny the way that all worked out.
Aaron, I have a funny feeling that these are some of the types of players that you like to recruit to your program. And
Yeah, absolutely. I think the psychology of what you're talking about is as a player and as a student athlete is so important, and it's there's so many ways that you can look at this. The recruiting is so early in college now for female sports, especially, that players are committing as freshmen and sophomores in high school. And how are you really projecting out what somebody's going to be like 3 years later? They're committing at 15 years old. And what a different person that you are from 15 years old to an 18-year-old,
Yeah.
from an 18-year-old to a 22-year-old. I mean, and so that projection is very, very tough. And in a second, and furthermore, that when you are most of the time, when you like our roster here, we had 28 players on our roster this last fall. Every one of those players started on their club team, started on their high school team, and was an integral part of their team. Well, when they come here as a freshman, some of them are really experiencing something for the first time of not playing
Mhm.
and not being a starter, not being that person, that player that people are looking to all the time. And psychologically, how are they prepared for that? How have they been prepared for that? And how do they deal with that? And so those are things that are very challenging. And as we recruit, we are trying to figure this out. How do I know what that individual is going to be like when they are confronted with hardships, with challenges? And and that's the mystery.
Mhm.
That's the mystery. And I think it's amazing to hear your backstory of finding your way, and
Mhm.
as of not necessarily being on the premier team, but still finding your way to follow your passion and your love of being a student athlete. And I also think that goes to show you that, and I talk to prospective student athletes all the time, and coaches and parents, there is a place for anyone that wants to pursue collegiate athletics, Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, NAI, junior college, thinking about all the avenues that you can go, and to never give up on searching for that right opportunity. And it sounds like, Kansas City to Montevallo, Alabama.
Yep.
That's a big
Yep.
change. I've been to both places.
Really?
Oh, come on. ODP, Region 3.
I was about to say, usually it's ODP. That's how people know what Montevallo is.
Been there many, many times as a coach and as recruiting. Been there, stayed in the dorms, visited the local places, which there aren't many.
No, there's not.
But listen, I live in Athens, Ohio, and I mean, Ohio University is probably a little bit bigger than Montevallo, but
Mhm.
it's still a small town, so I know what it's all about. So how did you find Montevallo then, or how did they find you?
Mhm. So, a little bit of a funny story there. My team was at a showcase in Tennessee and pouring down rain. I mean, it's basically a monsoon. There's puddles in the middle of the field that we can't pass through, we can't run through because the ball's going to stop. And this coach walks by the field for our first game, and not supposed to be there, wasn't going to come and watch our game, was actually going to watch another game. And my dad was the team manager at the time, and he handed him a profile. So the coach stopped for a second and watched. And that second turned into the entire first half, then the rest of the second half. At the end of the game, he has 4 numbers circled, and he asked my dad, who are these players? And my dad's telling them about them, like, oh, that's Danielle Wolf, that's Danny Fleck. Oh, that's my daughter, that's Taylor Gonzales. And the coach looks at him and says, you guys will be getting an email shortly after the tournament's over. Didn't come to another one of my games. And the Monday after that tournament ended at 8 a.m., I had an email waiting for me from the coach at Montevallo saying how he loved how I played, loved what I could do with the ball, and wanted me there for a visit. And 4 months later, I'm in Montevallo, Alabama, driving through, and I'm thinking, what the heck is this place? Why are stoplights hanging from wires right above the road? What are wooden street signs? I have no idea. And then they had a 7-on-7 tournament that day that they wanted me to come and watch. So I'm sitting there watching, and one of the girls from our team gives away the ball. Other player immediately takes it straight down the field and scores. And our player raised her hand and said, that's my fault, guys. That's on me. And I had never seen that kind of accountability in any player that I'd ever played with, let alone watched. And I'm like, that kind of accountability is something that I want to be a part of. And I don't even think that player knows that she's the reason why I decided to come in, because I was like, I want to play with that. I want to be a part of that. So that's just kind of how I ended up coming here to begin with. And then the reason why I stayed is an entirely different one.
Now those things happen. I mean, obviously being in the right place at the right time and kind of serendipitous moments of that coach walking by but I've been there. I've recruited the same way, thinking,
Yep.
oh, I'll just stick around and watch a little bit of this game. And then all of a sudden, I'll tell you a real quick story. One of the players that we had in our program, I actually was at the state high school championship game, which they always play in the Columbus Crew Stadium. They're right next to the Columbus Crew Stadium. There's a little tiny, like 5v5 pitch. And it was in between games, and I walked over there, and there was this team playing 5v5, and I saw a player on there, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, she has to be committed somewhere, blah, blah, blah. And I talked to the coach, and he was like, nope. And that's how I saw a future player. Well, she's done now, but a player. So
yeah.
These small world of soccer, and be prepared to always be on your best as a player, and be prepared to always look for potential future players.
Yeah.
So, Taylor, you're talking to 2 former goalkeepers, and Aaron being the far and away better of the 2 of us. But I being a field player, I'm wondering what you were like, and describe yourself, in terms of your style of play, or hey, this was something that I felt that I was really good at as a player. And I say that because, I can tell that there's an absolute love for having, a soccer ball at your feet, right? And being good on the ball. But I'm wondering, how would you describe yourself as a player if you took a step back and maybe you were trying to recruit yourself or something like that?
When it comes to taking a step back, so what Aaron actually mentioned earlier about how can you project a kid out from the time they commit at 14 or when they're visiting at 14 to 18 to 22, if you had seen me as a freshman in high school, a junior in high school, to a senior in high school, you would have seen 3 completely different players, let alone college. So take that completely out. My freshman year of high school, I would have been lucky if I'd gone to a junior college because of how far behind technically I was, because I was always the fast kid. I was always the fit kid. So I was your typical right back. And then my junior year, after a full 2 years worth of development where I was just focusing on technical development, I was good on the ball. That's when I committed. That's when I recruited. I was an 8 at that point. I was a pure center mid. I got the ball, I gave it, got the ball, I gave it. I was enough of a playmaker to where I was impacting games, but I was still selfless. By the time I got to my senior year, it wasn't I was technically competent, it was I was technically good. I was very, very, very good. So I had this 4-year metamorphosis of a player who can't kick a ball in a straight line to a player that was going to take you on. And then I get to college, and that became my identity as a player. I was extremely techie and really, really good with the ball at my feet. I mean, I love to take players on 1v1, almost to the detriment of the team at times. And I think it drove my coaches a bit crazy. But I mean, I love the idea of being able to see what you can do when you're going against somebody and how many different ways can you improvise. So I was your typical wide player. We played in a 3-5-2. I was part of the 5. And basically my job was to run at people and to see how many chances I could create a game. And I loved doing it.
Sounds like you were not only comfortable, but, good at it as well. Talk about, so you recognized early on in your development, a deficiency, right? You said, hey, I wasn't that good technically with the ball, but knowing that was an area you wanted to improve in, what did you do? People can go watch the videos, but what did you do, in terms of enhancing or developing or, gaining those skills that you might have been lacking at the time?
So I actually train at a place called Athlete Fit, and I've been there since I was in 7th grade. And I've continued through that program, and now I actually work there. But initially it was YouTube. I literally looked up however many technical drills I could find, and I was out on the field for 3 hours a day. And then my boss kind of recognized we can use this, and then he started implementing that in our program there. So I was almost doing double duty there, where I was training on my own, doing these simple little technical drills, and then I was doing it at the place at the time that I was working out at too. So I was getting so many reps in just by looking things up, and then it became, oh, now I'm going to try this. I saw a player do this, so now I want to try that out. Then it was training for multiple hours a day in the racquetball room and just figuring out how can I pull off this, or how can I open up my body. So just by either watching other players or just by looking things up, that's how I was kind of able to accelerate my development that most kids get at an early age. I was all of a sudden getting at 14.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that, youth players, so I love what you said that, taking players on 1v1, and I want my players to do that, but you have to have a certain level of confidence as a player to be able to even do that, right? To be creative. You can't do the same thing every time. They're going to figure you out pretty quickly. There's a level of strategy involved in terms of taking a player on 1v1, and, that word confidence again, in terms of, like, damn it, I'm good enough. I can take you on. I'm going to beat you. I mean, it reminds me of when I was in college and would play like pickup basketball with some of the guys. Now, granted, I wasn't very good, but, I always thought that I was better than I actually was. But, having that confidence to take a player on. And I wonder, and I've seen it with youth players, that they treat a soccer ball sometimes like a hot potato, or they treat it like it's a ticking time bomb, right?
Yep.
And that, for me, there's a direct correlation that, comfort level on a ball is also related to confidence.
Yes.
And it sounds like that your confidence shot up when you became more technically proficient with the ball. So I don't know if that's something you've noticed, or, just have seen yourself develop or grow in as a player.
100%. The better I got on the ball, the greater my confidence increased. It was exponential, because one of my favorite quotes that my coach told me is, the way you play is a reflection of who you are as a person. If that 14-year-old me, that fast, fit kid, was super shy, super quiet, that was kind of a reflection of my relationship with the ball at the time, because I drew a lot of myself, a lot of my identity through soccer. And you see my growth as a player, and all of a sudden you see this confidence, and both of them are going up. And by the time I got to college, I was secure in the fact that I knew that I was good on the ball. And that confidence came through repetition, to the point where not only was my confidence showing on the field, but just day-to-day life, walking to class, hanging out with friends. introducing myself to new people, which was never something that I would have done as a freshman in high school. Now it was like, okay, what my coach was saying makes sense. The more confident I am in something that I put worth in, something that I value, the more confident I am elsewhere. So 100%, literally through the repetition and through the confidence that I gained on the ball, it skyrocketed everything else.
Well, we live in a world right now where there's a whole lot of gadgety, things out there, right? You scroll through your Instagram feed. I mean, I think I saw 2 or 3 of them just today alone that have come up as, advertisements of, hey, buy this product. It'll help you get better at X, Y, and Z. It's smoke and mirrors, in my opinion. And I think one of the things you've done, and you've shared this, on your Instagram, literally it's you, a ball, and a wall, passing, receiving, body position, body shape, angles, all these small little details that, maybe a parent might miss, a coach might miss, but are incredibly important, right? And, it's not just, dribbling through cones or unopposed training or whatever. There's a place for all these things, by the way, and opposed training, obviously. But people forget that the most simple way to train is literally a ball, a wall, and a player.
Yeah.
And, so I know you've gone that route, and maybe speak to that just for a moment in terms of the success you've had, developing confidence with both feet. You mentioned before about being able to make a pass. It sort of all ties together, right?
Yeah. So I think a lot of problems that players kind of run into is they don't know where to start. They don't know what to do. And I think sometimes we as coaches get caught up in, well, just pass, just go dribble, just go do this. So when it comes to what can players do or what did I do, it was by looking things up first. And then once you kind of get that little foundation under your feet and you're like, okay, I know I can do that because I at least have a direction now. Then you get confident with that. Then you start to experiment. It's like, okay, well, what if I did a roll to inside outside touch, not just a roll to inside stop? And then they get confidence because 1, they just came up with something, and 2, they can do it. So then they keep on growing with this. They start chunking things together. They're making new patterns. And now you've got a player who's owning their own development. So it starts with the simple drills like passing and receiving or inside and outside touches. Like for me, it was just 2 touch passing against a wall and then 1 touch passing against a wall. And then it was, okay, can I open up? So just by giving players that little bit of direction and making it sound simple where it's like, okay, yeah, I can do that. I can do 2 touch passing. And then you steer them in the right direction. And then if they want it, they're off. And now they're going at it full speed and they're taking control of it.
Aaron, go ahead, jump in.
What, as a student athlete, as a soccer player specifically, what was your process through your freshman year, through your 4th year, or your last year as a soccer player in taking responsibility for your own development?
I think it stayed basically the same because my coach trusted me, and he every once in a while had to say, I want you to do this a little bit differently, or I want you to refine that. He never said, I want you to be that player. And I think that's something that I was striving for my entire club and high school career. Like I want to play like Neymar. I want to play like Dani Alves. I want to play like Iniesta. I want to play like this player. He said, no, I don't want that. I want you to be the best you, whatever that may be. So it was me going out on the field for a couple hours a day after practice and either doing footwork, shooting, or passing. And I would alternate between those 3. I hit them each at least twice a week. So on top of training, I was doing that outside of training, and that was just a constant all 4 years. I wouldn't say that anything ever changed. It was mostly just I was getting better at the things that I was doing.
So during season, obviously, you did put in a little extra work. Your season's over in the 1st of November. Division II, you guys have a little bit different spring than Division I as far as the amount of time that you can play as a team.
Yep.
What was your process like from November through April?
I mean, November through April, April. I remember season ends October 31st, and my teammate on the bus ride home asked me how many days I'm going to take off. I'm like, I'm not. I'm starting tomorrow. And I think that just kind of took her aback. But essentially off season, so November, December was about 3 hours of training a day on my own, back at home, back at Athlete Fit. So that consisted of a lot of agility, a lot of footwork, a lot of passing. And the footwork and passing and agility were actually how I got my fitness in. I never actually ran. Over the course of 4 years as a soccer player, I ran 4 times. I ran once a year with my sister because she asked me to pace her through her fitness test. And I always came back as the fittest player on the team and the fastest player on the team. So it worked because I did all of my ball work and all of my passing interval style. Getting into January through April, when we got to do team training again, whether it be individual sessions or conditioning sessions, I would do those with the team. And then I would still supplement with the ball work, the passing, and then the finishing outside. So that was still about another 3 hours a day, just a little bit more almost weight room focused or gym focused in the spring, which is usually how most programs go, because the spring is about more individual development.
How much did you play?
So games, practices, what do you
No,
mean?
just like pickup, like play. Because I talk to our players all the time. Listen, soccer's a game, and what are our games supposed to be? They're supposed to be fun. We're
Mhm.
supposed to enjoy that, and so get together with 2, 3, 4, or 5, however many teammates you can, and just play 2v2, 4v4, 6v6 on
Mhm.
small goals, on big goals, whatever it is. That's what we do. That's the passion of what we do,
Mhm.
and the commonality of why we're here is soccer. Probably wouldn't be friends with each other if it wasn't for soccer.
Yeah.
So enjoy what brings us together.
Mhm.
And I mean, how did you see that kind of stuff?
So my freshman year, the men's team actually kind of adopted me, and they were playing futsal in one of our little side gyms. And they had seen me kicking out. They knew that I could play and they knew I could play well. So they brought me in. So by my freshman year, I was playing futsal with a bunch of these foreigners from the men's team. And that kind of carried on throughout the spring, throughout all 4 years. And then it was, well, now the women's team wants to play too. So then we would go out, we would play pickup, whether it be outside with small goals, or we actually scheduled like an indoor futsal league Wednesday mornings instead of our normal like practice sessions. And our coach was like, okay, yeah, sure. We don't know about it. So you guys go ahead. So that's kind of how we got into it, with a lot of small sided stuff.
So how many of your teammates, because obviously the men and women are different and their
Mhm.
motivations and drives are different. How many of your teammates did you get to come in and play? Not because you made them, but because they saw it and they wanted to be a part of it.
My freshman year, it was just me.
Mm.
Then my sophomore year, it was myself, and then I think 1 to 2 other girls. Actually, no, it was 3 because it was my roommates. So my roommates after my freshman year kind of realized, okay, wait, that looks kind of fun. I kind of want to go play soccer tennis. So then it was us 4. Then my junior year, we bring in a couple more kids, and now we've got about 8 of us going out and kicking, whether it be soccer, tennis, whether it be futsal, or whether it be small sided outside. And then by my senior year, it was an expectation. And we got in a Brazilian girl who I absolutely love and adore. I mean, the kid lives and breathes soccer. So it's you factor in her, you factor in a couple of other kids, and now all of a sudden we've got more than half the team that's going out and doing this because they want to do it and because they love it.
You know what you just created?
A culture.
You got it. 100%. And your coach didn't make you do it. You chose to do that. And I think it's fascinating and it's awesome that you had that foresight, because I tell our players all the time, as we build our culture, and each culture every year is different. Every year we have new people creating a legacy and building on the legacy and creating that new legacy. And you said something that stuck with me, is you said by your senior year it was an expectation, because when new players come in and they see the returning players do it, then they automatically think, I guess this is what we do. This is
Yep.
what Montevallo soccer does. This is what Ohio soccer does. And it's no different for them. And it just takes that, the lack of a better term, peer pressure, to bring people
Yeah.
in, because those properties, those transactional properties, or those transformational properties, as opposed to transactional properties where you decide that you want to do it, as opposed to your coaching staff making you do it,
Mhm.
creates a stronger, more successful bond between each other
Mhm.
and potential for success. Doesn't
And one,
guarantee it, but
sorry, go
potential.
ahead.
No, yeah, go ahead.
So one thing that's crazy about that, my freshman year, we won one game. My sophomore year, after we had fired that coach my freshman year, we won two. And then it was 6 games. Then it was our first winning record in 10 years. And this year, 5 years after that initial 1-win season, they just won their first conference championship and made it to the NCAA tournament.
I saw that. Yeah,
Wow.
looking at the
And
schedule.
you look at this growth, and when you look at the number of players who did extra work, it's increasing and it's constantly growing. And then it's not just them doing extra work because the extra work is a requirement, it's because they want to do it. Whether it's for themselves to see themselves grow, to see the team grow. And this year was the first year I think my teammates could say it was because they wanted their team to grow, not just seeing their own numbers improve, whether through statistics or through confidence.
Fantastic.
Taylor, you strike me as a highly motivated and a highly just driven, young woman, and I think that's awesome. Not only the dad of 3 kids, but 2 little girls, in that people that you look up to and people that you sort of idolize, right? In that,
Mhm.
for me as a goalkeeper, Tim Howard, people love him or hate him, but this sort of, idea of like, gosh, like there's an American goalkeeper that I could maybe be like someday.
Mhm.
I like the way he plays, or I like the swagger he sort of has, and he's I'm curious for you. Do you think that's more, you're sort of wired this way, or are there people, and it could be family, it could be, athletes, it could be friends, aunts, uncles, whomever, that you sort of looked up to as a young person, going like, I want to be like them?
I'd say that, yes, I'm definitely wired this way. Like, I know that between my other two sisters and I, we're all three completely different people. We're three completely different players. But in terms of who I looked up to, it was honestly Mia Hamm, because that was the first.
Mm.
Like, that was kind of, at the time, the pinnacle of women's soccer. And I remember my dad, when we would go out to the field when I was younger, like maybe 8, he'd say, "You're a mini Mia Hamm." And that just kind of stuck, because she was fast, she was aggressive, she was fearless. And from that point on, I'm like, I want to play pro. That's what I want to be. And then it wasn't necessarily Mia Hamm's name anymore. It was, I just want to play pro. Not I want to be like her, but I want to do this.
In terms of just the managing the work life and sort of the, all the responsibilities you have as an athlete, um, it's made for some people, right? And it also can break other people. And I saw this when I went to college, that, guys and gals, and you'd mentioned this, I think, earlier, that, some players that may have peaked a little too soon, and, they don't even make it through their first year or whatever.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, just knowing that we have a mix of folks listening to this show, but especially young athletes, in terms of, it goes back to what you said. I have this idea of I want to get to a certain level, but then what is actually required when you're at that level, right? So you're working hard,
Mhm.
working hard, working hard. They say, hey, Taylor, we want you to come play for us. You get here, okay, new environment, new people, whatever. How do you manage your time? How do you manage the distractions? How do you manage the peer relationships, um, and I haven't even said a word about academics yet. So, by the way, probably the most important part, probably why I'm not a college coach yet. But tell me what that was like for you.
So, like you said, the academics probably being the biggest part. That honestly is, because I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't have, I think it's either a 2.5 or a 2.0 GPA, you're not playing. And our coaches set the standard a little bit higher, saying, no, it's going to be a 3.0 or higher. And if you dip under a 3.0, you have study hall and it's mandatory. So by valuing schoolwork and by emphasizing that, you already get kids coming in who are going to be a little bit more inclined to care about their schoolwork. But setting that aside, being able to manage my time came down to how many hours a day I knew I was going to be practicing. And for me, it was helpful because our practice was in the morning. So it's not like I was going to be doing anything else at that time. I was going to be sleeping if I wasn't. I wasn't going to be doing homework. I wasn't going to be hanging out with friends at 5:30. No, I was either going to be asleep or luckily going to practice. So that made that a little bit easier. And then getting done with classes, knowing, okay, I want to go to the racquetball room from 2 to 6, and I've got a gap from 12 to 2, so I need to study and eat. And then after 6 o'clock, from about 6 to maybe 9, all right, that's when I can get my schoolwork done. I was also lucky because of the way my classes panned out. I had a lot of time during the day to get all of my schoolwork done during my first 4 years. This year's not the case. This year's a completely different story where, yes, I still have practice in the morning, but my classes are a lot more spread out throughout the day, but they're also back to back. So I don't necessarily get the same luxury of built-in study times. So it means some later nights and making sure that I get my schoolwork done, because I am still competitive on the academic front. I don't just want to pass. I want to get a 4.0. I don't want to just get a 4.0. I want to be the best student in the program. So just making sure you know what your goals are and scheduling your day around what you need to do to achieve those goals, whether it is in the classroom or on the field, or for me, in this case, on the track.
I'm going to have you mentor my 2 daughters when they get a little bit older. That's a hot mess right there, ladies and gentlemen. So you graduated with 1 degree. You're back for a second bachelor's degree. And tell folks a little bit about your path. You're now doing a second sport. You've also been highly competitive and done well in that sport, from what my research tells me. So,
Yeah.
How do you, you came in as a soccer player and as a footballer, but you're kind of on your way out as something else. But yet that love of soccer obviously is still there. Tell folks a little bit about your journey, what you've studied, and maybe where you see this all going.
So I came in, like you said, as a soccer player, and my first degree was in exercise science. So everything about the human body, how do you apply it? How can you train people and train them well? By that last semester of my senior year, at the end of my junior year, I was at home for summer break and something just kind of bugs me in the back of my head saying, what if you did track? I'm like, shut up, you hate running. Like, why would you ever do that? That's stupid. No. So I put it away. I shoved it to the side. I'm like, don't ever think about that again. And it kept on coming back, and it was needling, and it was just eating at me. And I'm like, you know what? Fine. I've joked about this with the cross country coaches for the past 3 years, but I'll email them. There's no way they'll say yes. Well, I did. I had a voicemail that night from the track coach saying, yeah, if you want it, like, go ahead. Like, you can walk on, send us your sizes, and you'll start December 1st after soccer season's over. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'm doing this. All right.
Wow.
So fast forward through my senior season, I actually tore a muscle in my knee that season from a girl sliding to me from behind, ran me into the goalpost. The goalpost hit my shin, severed the muscle that attaches your femur to your tibia. It's called your popliteus. Most obscure muscle in the body possible. Managed to play the rest of the season without it, but I definitely had a major limp. Running helped rehab it in a way that I would have never expected, because there's no set protocol for that rehab, because usually that's the last muscle that goes in a total knee blowout. So by me training for track, that actually helped heal my knee. I jump into track season, and all of a sudden I kind of found my niche. Like, for as much as I love and adore soccer, for as much as I lived and breathed it, it kind of gave me a new perspective. It's like, soccer doesn't just have to be the only thing in your life. You don't just have to be a footballer. You don't just have to be a soccer player. You can be other things without feeling like you're abandoning something else. So that spring was when track season kind of took off. And after my second race, I was 4 seconds off of going to nationals for the mile in something that I had just started. And that's when my coaches were like, do you realize how good you are? I'm like, no, I ran a 5:03 mile, and I ran really, like, that hurt. Okay, cool. And at that time, I was actually trying to play professional soccer. So I was reaching out to different clubs. I was thinking about getting an agent, and I actually got 2 offers to go overseas, one for a team in Norway, then one for a team in Finland. And at that same time, my coaches offered me to come back and run cross country and track for a 5th year.
Hmm.
The 2 teams that wanted me to go pro wanted me to go in March before I was done with school, before I was done with track. So I turned them down because I wanted to finish it out. And at the time, I'm like, I've got a shot at winning something, because over the course of 4 years of college soccer, I didn't win anything. I got no all conference awards, nothing. I think the best thing I got was all tournament team my junior year. And I'm like, I've got a shot at winning conference. I have a shot at doing something that I have not done before, but something I had been working towards for Lord knows how long. So I stayed. That summer, I gave myself the full 2 months to try and qualify, or try and get a team, try and go overseas. Didn't work out. So at that point, I decided to take the gap year to just focus on running and sell out and become the best runner I could be. Fast forward a year later, after training by myself for a year, now I'm back. And I'm getting that 2nd degree in dietetics while also running cross country and track for the first time. This past season, my first season ever of cross country, I ended up getting mono in the middle of the season. Go figure. And rebounded from that and ended up going to nationals by an individual qualifying time, and then PR'd by 34 seconds at the national championships, which was insane. Like,
Wow.
to drop 34 seconds in a season is the equivalent of a kid going from left bench to scoring almost 15 goals in a season. So it, like, that to me, that was just crazy the way it all kind of worked out.
Aaron, raise your hand if you can run a 5:03 mile.
I can run an 8-minute mile.
The goal is to go a little bit faster than that this year. The goal this year is a 4:36. So
Hey, well, I'm a 46-year-old man, okay? That doesn't do anything. A former goalkeeper, mind you.
I'm the oldest freshman in the NCAA right now. So
I got you. Well, congrats on the Nationals finish. That was fantastic. I just read the story. That's awesome. Congratulations.
thank you.
So, where do you, once you're finished, academically and your eligibility is up, what's next in sort of that, phase of your life?
So I was just talking to my boss / coach about this about a week ago, about how I'm about ready to let this chapter close. I think when I first graduated, I wasn't ready to close the Montevallo chapter yet, because I wanted to come back and I was waiting for this moment. I was waiting for nationals. I was waiting for track. And now I'm ready to kind of move on from that. I'm getting excited for being able to work again and getting to do my job. So the goal right now is to go back and work at Athlete Fit. And there I'm a sports performance coach. I'm the director of technical development. We have our own training system and philosophy that we coach at home back in Overland Park, but we also take overseas. So this past year, we actually got to go to China and we got to present to their Olympic committee about how you can produce youth athletes. How do you train them, and why is it different, and what's the best way to do it? So by coaching and mostly education about training philosophy and different ways to get it done, that's definitely the niche that I want to fall into once I'm done here.
Wow. Do you ever see yourself, you mentioned the technical part of, football or soccer. I don't know. Do you ever see yourself being a college coach maybe?
I've thought about it and I've gone round and round with it. And the reason why I haven't, and I don't think that I will, is because with every team, you have the 33% rule. You've got the top 33%, which make your job worth it. They're the kids that you love investing in. They give you everything they have. They're the joys to coach. You've got the bottom 33%, which are the kids that will never listen. They'll give you any excuse in the book and they'll bad talk you. They'll do whatever they can to not do the work. Then you've got the middle 33% who kind of fall either way, depending on who they're around. And the culture kind of dictates where those kids go, because you get a lot of middle 33% kids. You get maybe 1 to 2 top, and you can get a lot more bottom kids just depending on what the team is. And I wouldn't ever want to be in a position where I'm dealing with kids that are making me bash my skull against a wall when I know how simple it can be, or when I see so much potential being left on the table. Whereas the job that I have now, it's you get the kids who want to get better, you get the top and the middle. And if we do get a kid from the bottom, they don't usually stay for long because they don't want to do the work. So I love the sports performance side of things because you get the motivated kids, you get the drive. Not entirely sure about team coaching. It would probably have to be like the perfect scenario, the perfect setting where I'm like, okay, yes, this is something that I want to buy into and invest in.
Hmm. I think Aaron and I have had this conversation, Taylor, that it's really interesting when sometimes you feel like you want it more than the players.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously don't know you exceptionally well, but I mean, to have a player like yourself or, maybe some others in your network that are motivated, that are determined, that, are spending literally 3 hours a day training, off season or whatever, makes our job incredibly easy. We're, Aaron uses the analogy that we're basically the bumper rails on a bowling alley. Our job is just to keep you from, going in the gutter.
Yeah.
Everything else, you're more or less kind of managing on your own. I find it incredibly fascinating as a coach trying to motivate, like you said, that middle to bottom. I guess it'd be 66% of what do you do with them? How do you get it out of them? And it's different. You can't paint it with a broad brush. You can't, um, there isn't sort of one magic panacea that's going to fix everybody. Some respond better to verbal communication. Some prefer a one-on-one conversation. Some prefer, sort of the group stuff or whatever. But they're all different. And I think that is probably, really the art of being a coach where that comes in. And, Aaron, I'm sure you've had this experience probably 50 times over. So.
When it
Yeah,
comes,
listen,
sorry, go ahead.
my goal, and it's funny that you talk about the thirds because I have taken it upon myself in maybe a quest that is never going to be fulfilled or conquered to make sure that every single player on our roster has an engaging feeling with our team.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's possible because there's always outliers that aren't happy with something or not motivated or because we could talk for days and days, or at least I mean I can because I can talk a lot, but talk for days and days on why people are where they are. Why is somebody on the Montevallo soccer team? Why is somebody on the Ohio soccer team? Or why, because their motivation, everybody comes from a different place emotionally, and and why are they there? And that's my goal. And so, I think it to understand and to be self-conscious about that or self-aware to say, you know what, I don't know if I want to deal with people that aren't motivated like me, because that is the hardest thing, because I don't think you'll ever be in a team that the players care more than you. Because if there are, you should never coach, obviously, and you being so motivated, you will find that hard to see players that have potential, like you said,
Mhm.
and not be able to feel like you can reach them. And so, because I know if you to be self-aware at your age to understand that, because every college job from the very, very top to the very, very bottom is always a motivating challenge.
Mhm.
And it's interesting to hear you talk, and just because I'm so fascinated from the culture building, for lack of a better term, of understanding and what motivates each individual to want to be there, not to have to be there, but to want to be there. And you taking upon that role that you did, that we talked about earlier, is is very is very encouraging. I do have one question about, if you if you had a piece of advice to give to a freshman, what would that be going into as a soccer player?
Learn to love it, learn to embrace the hurt a little bit. And I think the learn to embrace the hurt part has kind of come from track for me. like learn, maybe a better way to put it is learn to be uncomfortable, embrace the uncomfortable. Because if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing.
Mm-hmm.
Because with soccer, it's so easy to fall in love with the game. I mean, there's so many different ways to be a great player that you find your niche and you learn to love it, because some players love feeling fast. Some players love being strong. Some players love being able to control a ball. So by falling in love with the route that you want to develop in, it makes the journey easy, but you've got to be okay with being uncomfortable with it. And that comes from my sort of track and cross country experience. It's like, okay, if I'm not uncomfortable during a workout, either one, I'm going too slow, or two, the pace isn't fast enough, or three, maybe I'm just super fit, but it's usually not number three. So learn to be okay with having to work for something, because that work is going to make you better. No matter what it is, you're going to come out a better player than when you first went into the session, if you get okay with being uncomfortable during that session.
Very well said. Taylor, if people listening to this want to connect with you and follow along with your journey and, kind of see what you're up to, what are some of the easiest ways they can connect with you?
Usually through social media, like the way you guys reached out. So like my Instagram handle, my Instagram account is GonzoGirl11. So that's my main one and has my email and everything on there. So that's definitely the best way to get in contact with me.
She's a great follow, and thank God the world of Instagram and some of the other social channels we have exist. Because if it wasn't for that, honestly, we wouldn't probably be having this conversation today. So good stuff. Taylor Gonzales, thank you so much for coming on the latest episode of the On the Touchline podcast, and best of luck the rest of the way at Montevallo. And please stay in touch. Your story is absolutely fascinating, and can't wait to see sort of what the next chapter holds for you. But I mean, just a really, I love the self-awareness and perspective about hard work, determination, perseverance, and kind of what that means, today for a young athlete. So
Thank you so much for having me.